And ultimately, my customers think they'll hire me if I can produce for them what we would call a return on investment, or a bigger bag of money over here, what they perceive as a larger bag of money than the money they put in. So they're investing in the software product because they believe it's going to have some impact. If it's an intranet, it's going to make them more efficient. If it's a website, it's going to make them, find them more clients. If it's a kiosk or some other sort of software application, it's going to give them a return on their investment, or they're not going to invest in it. So this is how the business flows. They give us some money, we deploy some capabilities, we produce a product, an output, a tactical output, and that goes and makes them more money in the market. Does that make sense? That's what it looks like. But I'm telling you, the goals are wrong. And we know this. This is why we talk about having outcomes versus outputs, because these are our outputs. But let's talk about that. So what are the goals? What should the goals be? Go to a new flip chart here to talk about goals. And what I believe is pretty simple. And all businesses work this way, but we're going to talk about software products today. But the only goal of every software product, at least the products that people use, the goal is always the same. The goal is to produce this thing that we call advocates. Now, advocates is a strange word, and there's no better word in the English language that I could find to describe what I mean. So let me take a moment to define it. When I use the word advocate, what I mean is I'm looking for people, one who invests in the future of my product. In the future of my product. Now think about that for a moment. We want advocates, people who invest in the future of my product. Now I don't only mean, this is interesting, I don't only mean my customers, the people that use the product. That's important. Like, we can't build a great software product without a community of advocates, and I'll come back to that in a minute. I also mean the people that are building the product. Like, the people that are building the product need to be advocates of what that product is going to do in the world if we're going to maximize our success together.
Hello, leaguers, and thank you for joining us for today's Practical Wednesday session. And this one is a little different because today this content is going to be more actionable than ever, because these days requires content that's delivered to help you on your most urgent challenges. Now, it's not a secret that with COVID-19 goes outside, the challenges at the office and, well, our virtual office are bigger than ever. And what every company and every product team needs in order to achieve product momentum is much focus and alignment on their tactics and strategy. And without that, well, we won't achieve the goals and the KPIs that we set ourselves for success. Now, it's going to be a little different because it's going to be a little workshop, and you'll be more action oriented than usual. And this is exactly why this is a must content for all product managers out there that want to set their product and team for success. So I'm so happy that you join us, because just wonderful content that is going to help you to become the best product manager you can be. By the way, if you're new here, my name is Maria Cassis. I'm the founder and general manager of Product League, and what we do is helping you to become the best product manager you can be. We have a mentoring program for product managers by product managers, where we offer you not just the most amazing mentors out there, but also an proprietary e-learning system, events, workshops, everything that you need in order to become the best product manager you can be. So if you are set on becoming just an amazing product leader, well, we should talk, and please make sure to look for our application link in the comments for this wonderful event. Now, I'm not going to do this by myself. I have a very special guest joining us today, and it's going to be just an awesome learning experience. And I'm so happy to bring into our stage the wonderful Sean Flaherty. How are you today?
Hey, Mariah, thanks for having me.
Happy to have you. And guys, if you don't recognize Sean just by his name, so you should check out his podcast, because Product Momentum is one of the best podcast out there for product managers with just wonderful content, great speakers, just guests that join Sean and his fellows there on bringing just wonderful content for product managers. And I want you guys to know why I am so excited to have Sean here with us today. So Sean Flaherty is the Executive Vice President of Innovation at ITX, where he directs his energy of the intersection of product software development, human motivation, and organizational leadership. His storytelling technique allows him to bring all these tools of life during awesome workshops like we're gonna have today, where you can find just whole team and clients just gain alignment, create confidence, and guide stakeholders how to share commitments around the vision and product roadmaps. And especially on these days like this, right? It's so critical to have this alignment. And Sean, this is why I'm so happy to have you here with us today, because I think critical times require critical workshops like this one. So it's going to be very actionable and to the point content. And with that in mind, I also want the guys in the audience to know that we want to take questions from them, right? So please, guys, make sure to use the chat and comment with all the questions that are on your heart and mind when it comes to strategy and alignment and product momentum and just how to set your team on the right path to have the right strategy and focus. So please, guys, make sure to be as engaged as possible, because this is going to set your tomorrow to just amazing new success path on your product. So Sean, anything else that you want to add to our audience before we dive in?
Nope, I'm ready to go whenever you're ready to unleash me.
I'm happy to do that. And the stage is all yours. And guys, just get ready to a wonderful learning experience. Thank you very much, Sean.
All right. Well, thank you. I want to first start by saying thank you to Product League and thank you to Mariah for reaching out. I'm honored to be here. And I love your t-shirt, by the way, Mariah. That's fantastic. I always start my talks with a quote from one of my heroes in the statistics world. His name is George Box. And we've got a picture of him here to share with you guys. But George he got a PhD in statistics from London University. He's no longer with us. He passed away quite a few years ago. But he got his PhD at London, went on to Stanford University, where he built their statistics department, and then started the statistics department at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. He wrote several books on statistics, worked on many algorithms for figuring out how to effectively use statistics. And actually, if you use any statistics packages today or use statistics in your day-to-day job, you'll find, if you do a little bit of homework, that he's probably behind a lot of that, the thinking and the logic behind those tools. And he's got a great quote. So this is like the master of statistics in the world, right? So this is his quote: "All models are wrong. Some models are useful." And there is no place on earth where this is more of an applicable quote than in the product world. Any pundit that comes and tells you this is the only way to run product, or that this process is better than that process on all teams universally, we all know, if you've been in this space long enough, that it just doesn't work that way. Product is hard. Product is really hard. And it requires a deep bench of tools and a deep set of skills and a lot of experience to be able to build great products. And the other thing we know about building products is it doesn't take, there's no one person that makes a product work magically. It requires an entire team, a team of highly motivated, highly intelligent people to bring a really great product to market. So there is no magic formula. All models are wrong, but some models are useful. So I'm going to share some of the things that I've learned in my 20 some odd years of building software products, actually 30 some odd years, because I started writing code when I was about 11 years old on a Commodore VIC-20. And I brought many products to market, some of which you've probably used. I run innovation for a company called ITX. I'm one of the partners in that firm. And we've been officially, formally for-profit building software products since the late 90s, since the beginning of the internet. So I've learned a lot of lessons, and I intend to share a lot of that with you guys today. We won't get obviously too deep because we've only got an hour, but we're going to go as deep as we can inside of that hour. All right. You ready? Let's get going. So I'm going to start with a discussion around the software product industry and how it's worked historically, and where I think some of the flaws are in how we build products. Because by studying what doesn't work, we can also learn what works. So I'm going to start with a conversation around business. So I run a software development company. So we build software products for a living. That's all we do. So design, engineering, innovation, which is really product leadership in our parlance, support, even security, all the things that go into building great software products, we have it all. That's what ITX does. So, and it works like this. We have customers, we have clients, we'll call them, and they come to us universally with these beautiful green bags of money, all right? And they say, I need a set of features built. A set of features, and I want it to look like this. I need feature X, Y, Z, feature A, B, C, build these features for me. Tell me how much it's going to cost and how long it will take to get them. Does this all sound familiar to you guys? I'm sure that it does. And if I can do that well, if I can build these features well, they'll give me this bag of money, and then I go about building it. So I'm a contractor, right? So we build the product, we deliver the features, they pay us the money, and then we go on with our lives. Except that it's never really worked that way. In my world, I can go down this checklist of features requests. And by the way, this usually comes in the form of a request for proposal, like an RFP, or a request for a quote. They ask for a quote, we give them a quote, they compare it to other quotes they've gotten from other vendors. Maybe we get the work, maybe not. But they never tell me how much is in the bag. It's a mysterious bag of money. So I have to come up with this quote, and we have to engineer a solution that's going to meet these requirements, right? And here's what I can tell you universally. If I build products and we deliver these features just as they've asked, they'll get the features, I'll get my money, and they will be miserable 100% of the time. And you guys have all felt this. I'm sure if you've been in this space long enough, you've felt this problem around road mapping. And this is what I would call the Road Map Quadrant. And the Road Map Quadrant, these are our tactical outputs. So let's talk about that for a minute. So these are our tactical outputs, the tactics that we deploy. So yes, we need to build features. These features need to exist. They also need to be designed, so there has to be a design associated with them that people like. And at the lowest end of this tactical quadrant here, we need to write code. And the code needs to be efficient, it needs to function, it needs to be bug-free, and all of those things. So this is our tactical, what I would call a tactical output. And we need this to succeed. Except the goals are wrong, and we know the goals are wrong. Features for dollars is not the right way to incentivize your vendor, or any team for that matter. If you're telling your team the only way they add value is when they deploy a piece of software, then you've got a problem with the incentives. You've got a problem with the way in which you're communicating what your product's doing in the world. This is what I believe. And there's also this missing set of quadrants over here. These are our inputs. And in our world, the inputs that we put into developing these features, these designs, these codes, it's a set of people. It's humans, basically. It's human resources. And we call these capabilities. There might be some tools that we deploy as well, some software tools, but our inputs for the most part are people. They're designers, they're coders, they're software architects, they're product leaders, product managers, product owners. It's all the people that are required to produce a product. Now, if you think about my business, if you know anything about reading financial statements, if you read my financial statements, you'll find that the largest cost item on any of my financial statements by far is my labor. That's the only input I have to produce this software output, this product, this roadmap. So the inputs are the labor, and I need those resources, those people to be really skilled, highly skilled. So capabilities, this is the skills, the talent, the knowledge that they bring to the table. That's what goes in this quadrant. All right. And ultimately, my customers think they'll hire me if I can produce for them what we would call a return on investment, or a bigger bag of money over here, what they perceive as a larger bag of money than the money they put in. So they're investing in the software product because they believe it's going to have some impact. If it's an intranet, it's going to make them more efficient. If it's a website, it's going to make them, find them more clients. If it's a kiosk or some other sort of software application, it's going to give them a return on their investment, or they're not going to invest in it. So this is how the business flows. They give us some money, we deploy some capabilities, we produce a product, an output, a tactical output, and that goes and makes them more money in the market. Does that make sense? That's what it looks like. But I'm telling you, the goals are wrong. And we know this. This is why we talk about having outcomes versus outputs, because these are our outputs. But let's talk about that. So what are the goals? What should the goals be? Go to a new flip chart here to talk about goals. And what I believe is pretty simple. And all businesses work this way, but we're going to talk about software products today. But the only goal of every software product, at least the products that people use, the goal is always the same. The goal is to produce this thing that we call advocates. Now, advocates is a strange word, and there's no better word in the English language that I could find to describe what I mean. So let me take a moment to define it. When I use the word advocate, what I mean is I'm looking for people, one who invests in the future of my product. In the future of my product. Now think about that for a moment. We want advocates, people who invest in the future of my product. Now I don't only mean, this is interesting, I don't only mean my customers, the people that use the product. That's important. Like we can't build a great software product without a community of advocates, and I'll come back to that in a minute. I also mean the people that are building the product. Like the people that are building the product need to be advocates of what that product is going to do in the world if we're going to maximize our success together. Hopefully this makes sense to you. So let's ask some questions here. So what is an advocate in the software world? What does an advocate look like? How do they behave? What do they do? How do you know that they're investing in the future of the product? It looks like this to me. And I figured this stuff all out, obviously, in building products over the last 20 some odd years. Advocates, the most common sense thing I hear when I talk to business leaders and product leaders about this, the most common thing I hear, most common sense thing is, well, advocates will promote you. They'll tell their friends about your product. They'll tell their colleagues. They'll share it. That's common sense, right? So if you have a good product in the world, you've built a good thing, the people who actually use it and love it will share it with others. Common sense. What else do advocates give you? Advocates also give you this magical thing called negative feedback. And I don't mean, when I say negative feedback, I mean purposeful feedback. I mean, they'll tell you, these are the guys, these are the people, the men and women who use your products, who will actively take the time to write out that 2-page monologue about why your product sucks and what you can do about it, what you can do to fix it. I'm not talking about the complainers or people that just don't like the product. I'm talking about the ones that actually take the time to invest in telling you how to do better, like what you could do better. These are people that have taken time out of their day to invest in helping you build a better product. Really important in a product ecosystem. What else? How about positive feedback? Why is that important? Well, it turns out you need positive feedback to feed the culture of your team. Like, what team wants to be building something that people don't love? So when you capture this positive feedback from advocates, you can share it with your team. It helps you build a culture that's going to help you fuel building a better product going forward. You need positive feedback from your advocates. Really important in the product world. You need to focus on it. You need to find it, hunt it down as a product leader, share it, communicate it, use it to pump up your team, to help you motivate your team. What else do you get from advocates? Well, they'll also give you insights. They'll tell you what your competitors are up to. If they're truly advocates, they'll tell you what's going on in the market that you should be on the lookout for. Again, not just the client advocates and user advocates, but also your employee advocates, the people on your team that are working on the product. They'll be looking for these insights. What else do advocates give you? Well, here's one of the things I figured out early on. They'll become your beta testers. Think about that. They will raise their hands and say, yes, I'll be your guinea pig for free. I'll test out your new features before you release them on the rest of the world, and I'll do it for free. I'll sign up for your beta program. That's an advocacy behavior. It turns out it's a really, really important behavior in the software development ecosystem. We can't live without advocates. Does this make sense? People who invest in the future of a product. What else? What else do they give you? How about this? raise your hand. I can't see you, but raise your hand if you have an Apple. Okay. Raise your hand if you have an Android. All right. Now, so it's probably split somewhat between the community here. But if I asked you to raise your hand if you've ever had that conversation with someone else, Apple versus Android, I'm pretty sure you would all raise your hands because we've all had that conversation. Your advocates will forgive you. This is one of the things that they'll do. They'll forgive you, and they'll also defend you in the market. They'll stand up for you. They'll tell people that use your competitive products why your product is better. They'll actually defend you in the market. Brilliant. All right, and the most important thing you get from advocates is this thing called ideas. They give you ideas. And in fact, I'm going to argue that the only place you get ideas for your products is from people who are advocates, both your customer, user advocates, and your employee advocates, the people on your team that are constantly thinking about this product because they care about it. They care about its future, and they're investing in its future by giving you ideas, taking time out of their day to share ideas with you, that things that you might want to test in the future in terms of features or functions. So this is the goal. The goal is to maximize the number of these people that we're able to create. To maximize the number of these people that we're able to create in every product ecosystem. And you can't build a great product without them. All right. You may argue that recurring usage, well, advocates will also use your product. They'll use it over and over again. My argument here is that, yeah, you're right. Advocates only come from this pool of what I call loyal users. Loyalty. They only come from this pool of loyal users. It's the only place you can get an advocate from. And I define loyalty as one who engages on a regular basis. So one who engages with your product on a regular basis. All right, at an appropriate recurring interval. And down below that, you never get to loyalty. You never get to loyalty unless your users first trust you. And it turns out this trust thing is foundational, it's fundamental, and it's one of the most important things you can do, especially in the early stages of use until you earn loyalty. You can focus on building trust foundationally because you need it to get to loyalty and you need it to get to advocacy. You'll never get to advocacy without loyalty. You'll never get to loyalty without trust, authentic trust. All right, one who has confidence in you. So trust is defined by confidence. Has confidence. And here's the thing. If you go through the same exercise that I just did with you guys for advocacy, one who has confidence in your product, that is going to solve the problems that they need solved. That's how you earn trust. I call this, by the way, I call this structure here, trust, loyalty, advocacy. I call this the relationship ladder. You guys can flop up that slide if you can find it. The relationship ladder. All right. And the relationship ladder, if I call it a ladder because it functions very much like a ladder, you go through these stages of relationship building. Okay. You go through these stages of relationship building with every product. In the beginning, they don't know who you are. They find your product and they get introduced to it. It's your job to earn trust from them. It's your job to earn loyalty. You can take that slide down now. It's your job to earn advocacy. Okay. I call it a ladder because every little step they take is a rung in the ladder. And your hope is that you continue to move them up the ladder. At some point, they're going to have a bad experience and go down, but that's your opportunity to move them up even farther. Because the goal, again, is to turn as many of your users as possible into true, authentic advocates. All right? Now, if you look at this, these are behaviors. All of these things, the one thing they have in common, they promote you, they give you feedback, they give you insights, they offer to be a beta tester, they forgive you, they defend you, they give you ideas. These are behaviors. These are behaviors that people can exhibit in the wild. And if they're behaviors, that means you can observe them. And if you can observe them, that means you can measure them. So if you can measure behaviors, you can come up with a relationship performance index, an advocacy relationship performance index, a loyalty relationship performance index, and a trust relationship performance index for every one of your products. And these become your North Star metrics. Are we actually able to change the nature of the relationship that we're building with our consumer in real time through our product. And if you're measuring these behaviors, it's very hard to do. It takes time. You have to. I have a process that we use for that to walk your teams through figuring out, how do I measure what this means? How do I measure what this means, and how do I measure what that means? Because every product ecosystem is different, but these are the types of behaviors you would be looking for to measure advocacy. Then you've got some real goals. So let's come back to this model real quick. Then you've got something very real to measure the relationships, and this is where on the top swim lane, you'll notice this diagram has 2 swim lanes. And right now I'm calling this the momentum framework. So this is the momentum framework. Okay. And the real goal is strategically, so our strategy is to achieve the maximum number of advocates that we possibly can. We want to earn trust, loyalty, and then ultimately advocacy in our ecosystem of customers. These are our strategic outcomes. Always. These are the strategic outcomes that we're after. And yeah, over here, this is our income. This is the income column. So we need this income. We got to turn it into inputs, turn those inputs into outputs, a product that gets an ROI. But strategically, it's about the people. So strategically, we need to drive outcomes. We need trust, loyalty, and advocacy. We need relationships to be improved. And the only way you can do that, is if you have a very clear vision for the people in your ecosystem, a very clear vision. So I define, and that's your strategic output is the vision of your product. The strategic output is your vision for your product. I define a vision as a very clear understanding of the people, who we solve problems for, what problems we solve. I'm going to come back to this, and how we're going to measure our success. That's it. That's all we need to have in our vision. How will we measure our success? And there's a hint. We'll measure our success when we're able to authentically and measurably increase trust, loyalty, and advocacy. So who we solve problems for, what problems we're solving for them, and how we're going to measure our success. That is a complete vision when you do it well. Okay? And then lastly, on the input side, the strategic input, like I said, our people are our only input. And strategically, I need them to be motivated. Motivation is the key strategic input. Strategic input. So motivated around the vision that we've created together. Motivated around this clear, articulated strategic picture of the future. So strategic output is the picture of the future that we're going to create together. Okay? And then ultimately, I want to find clients that have this same inspired intent. Inspired intent. So I want you to notice something real quick about this diagram. It's pretty simple, right? You got 2 swim lanes. The swim lane that the business needs to operate in to be effective. You can take that slide down for a minute, if you would. The swim lane that the business needs to be effective, which is taking some money, investing in some resources, building a product that delivers an ROI. But strategically, we need to have inspired intent to motivate our team to accomplish a great vision that actually authentically moves the needle on these strategic outcomes: trust, loyalty, and advocacy. The tactical outcome is always money at the end of the day, but the strategic outcome is trust, loyalty, and advocacy. Does that make sense? I hope it does. I'm going to share another model with you. I call this next model the math. I'm going to set this diagram aside over here. We'll come back to it. I'm going to share the math. It's the same model, same framework. By the way, I've been using some of these words a little irresponsibly, so let's take a minute let's back up. Let's define the word momentum. When I say the word momentum, what I mean when I say the word momentum is the ability of your product to measured and sustained improvement in the relationship that you're able to create between your product and its user, between an organization and the people it leads. So momentum is, by definition, the ability to create trust, loyalty, and or advocacy in a measurable way. That's how I'm defining momentum, okay? Let's talk about momentum, our ability to create trust, loyalty, and advocacy in a measurable way. Let's talk about that in the context of some math. So I like to use this framework right here. And momentum, I believe, is the combination of what we talked about earlier, strategy and tactics. Strategy and tactics. It's the combination. And when you have them and they're both strong, you get momentum. When you have a good strategy and you have good tactics, you achieve trust, loyalty, and advocacy from your products, from your users. Now, going backwards here, a couple thousand years, there's a really cool guy named Sun Tzu that they're not actually sure it was one man, might have been a group of people. But he wrote the book called The Art of War about many thousands of years ago. There's a great quote from that book. The quote goes like this. Strategy without tactics is the slowest path to victory. So if you have zero strategy or zero tactics, but you have a good strategy, you're not going to get any momentum. But tactics without strategy, that's the clanking of swords you hear right before defeat. Tactics without strategy is the clanking of swords. It's like the noise you hear as the enemy's climbing over the wall to stab you in the heart. So if you're operating, take the slide down for me if you would. If you're operating solely in this tactical swim lane, taking money, turning it into skills, getting after some features, and producing an ROI, that's all tactics. So we're all operating on tactics without a good understanding of strategy. That's my understanding. That's my belief. Okay. So we need strategy and we need tactics. All right. Now let's come back to this. So if either one of these is zero, how much momentum do you get? So basic math will tell you you don't have any strategy. Even if you're deploying tactics, you're going to get zero momentum. No tactics, or good tactics, but no strategy, zero momentum. Defined again as the ability of your product to create trust, loyalty, and advocacy. Now, if we break strategy down into its component parts, strategy is the combination of having a motivated team. Actually, let me do it a little differently. Strategy is a combination of having a very clear vision, meaning we know who we're solving problems for and what problems we're solving and how we're going to measure our success. That's a vision. The second thing is motivation. We need a team that's motivated, because the other thing Sun Tzu said in The Art of War is, I don't care how great of a leader you think you are, if you have a crystal clear vision, you know exactly what you accomplish, but your team, your people aren't signed up to get after that same thing, where are you going? Not very far. Your team needs to be motivated by that vision. Your team needs to be motivated by that vision. All right, otherwise you have zero strategy and you get zero momentum. Now, if we break down tactics into its component parts, we get our roadmap quadrant, the thing that we're actually building, the tactical output that we're actually building, and our tactical inputs, which is our capabilities. And it's a nonlinear equation, and when we maximize all four of these things, we maximize our momentum. Now think about this for a minute. You've got a clear vision. You know who you're solving problems for, what problems you're solving, how you're going to measure success. The team's motivated by that. The more motivated they are, the more momentum you're going to get. You have a clear roadmap and you're producing a good technical output, going to get more momentum. And you've got skills and your team is growing. Your team is growing and thriving, and they're bringing more and more skills to the table. These four things are what maximize momentum for any product team. Now, when one of them is broken, we have a problem. If one of these things is broke or not maximized, we're not operating in a maximum our maximum capacity. If the vision is weak, for example, we don't have a clear understanding of who our users are. We don't have a clear understanding of what problems we're solving in a stack ranked order. I'll come back to that. We don't have a clear understanding of how we're going to measure success or how we'll know when we're successful. Vision's weak. Even if the team is really motivated, the roadmap is clear, and they're highly capable, it doesn't manifest as momentum. It manifests as confusion. And I'm sure if you've been in this business long enough, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay. Vision is the clarity of the customer, the problem set, and the measurement of success. When any of those things is weak, you get a weak vision, you get confusion. All right. If we're clear on the vision, the team is clear on the vision, we have a good understanding of who we're serving, what problems we're solving, and how we're going to measure our success. But the team is not motivated or has low motivation for whatever reason. Even if the roadmap is clear and the capabilities are strong, it doesn't manifest as momentum. It manifests as resistance or apathy, or worse, burnout over time. Is making sense? Okay. The next one, even if the vision is clear and the team's highly motivated, what we get here, I call this one team, one dream. Vision is strong, team is highly motivated, but the roadmap is weak. When the roadmap is weak, even if the capabilities are strong, it manifests universally as waste. We could have done something better. And you can never really be done with this one. Like, there's always waste. There's always something to automate. There's always a better way to deploy. There's always something you could do to eliminate or reduce waste in your process. And lastly, don't flip up the next slide yet. We'll wait for this one. Let me explain it first. Lastly, if the vision's strong, the motivation's strong, the vision is clear, we know who we're serving, what problems we're solving, and how we're going to measure our success, and the team is really, really motivated by that, one team, one dream, and they can see the yellow brick road. They can see the path to get there. So one team, one dream, they can see the path to get there, but we're hamstringing them with their capabilities. We have the wrong butts in the wrong seats. We don't have the right skills. We're not giving them the right talent. They don't have enough knowledge. It manifests universally as frustration. Universally manifests as frustration. Now, this is a symptom set. So I call this the diagnostic model. The diagnostic model, or the math, which explains pretty much universally what happens when one of these things is broken in any product team. And you can look at the symptoms that you're feeling and work backwards to figure out which one of these things should I be working on as a product leader today. And I've developed a tool set. I have a workbook that I've developed called the Momentum Workbook, which if you sign up, we'll send you some links to sign up, and Mariah will send out an email afterwards if anybody wants a copy of the workbook. There will be a landing page. You can give us some information. We'll give you the workbook. We'll also give you all these slides. So these slides will be available to anybody on the call. If you come to our site and you sign up. You can also register for the podcast, and we'll communicate with you that way, or for our newsletter. But this is the diagnostic model. And what I found is that if you can get people to agree that this is the problem we have something we can work backwards on to actually go and build better products and constantly be monitoring. We've also developed a workshop that we call the Breakdown Breakthrough Workshop. When we see that our momentum is lacking, we're not able to cause more trust, loyalty, and advocacy to occur in the product, we can work backwards to figure out what are we doing wrong and how can we shore up our team. Does that make sense? All right. So with that, that's the diagnostic model. I want to break for a minute and have an opportunity for some Q&A. And then when we come back off the Q&A, I'll share one more piece of wisdom and knowledge with you guys before I let you go. So Mariah, can you facilitate the question and answer session?
Of course, I'm here with you. Okay, so I'm calling the audience again to submit their questions in the chat. We want to hear from you, and Sean is excited to give you as much valuable knowledge as possible. At the meantime, while the audience is getting ready and submit their questions, I have a question.
Sure.
From your experience, what is the most common situation or sickness to find? Because we had these 5 situations where one links of the puzzle of the chain is missing.
Yes.
So which link of the chain is usually
the most common? All right. But here's my long answer to your very simple short question. If you look at these are the things we have control over directly. We don't really have control over the outcomes. Like, we don't know what the outcomes will be until we put something in market, right? And we see the result. These are things that we have less control over as well, like our budget and the inspired intent of our stakeholders. But here's what I found. In our world, there is a hierarchy to these things. Our number one job as a product leader, our number one job is to make sure the vision is clean. It's articulated and people understand it. We know together and agree on who we're solving problems for. That's why we spend a lot of time doing personas, like my Herald back here, and understanding what problems we're solving for them. So who are we solving problems for, what problems we're solving, and how are we going to measure our success with very articulate outcome-based measures. That's the number one job. The number 2 job is to make sure that the team agrees and is motivated by that vision. And there could be a number of things that impact your team's motivation. And you need to understand as a leader what they are, because it's your job to make sure they're motivated. It's number 2. The number 3 job is to make sure that you have the right butts in the right seats. You have the right capabilities. Because if you don't, you're going to end up with a very frustrated team. If everybody's doing their job, but one person's not pulling their weight, what do you get? You get frustration. It's not fair to everybody else. So there's a priority order here. Get the vision right. Motivate your team. Make sure you have the right butts in the right seats. And you know what? If you're doing those three things right, this fourth job, you can just get out of the way. You know what I mean? You don't have to manage. You don't have to micromanage the tactical details of your problem.
Exactly. Right. Correct. And I'm so happy that you mentioned motivation, because Manish has a question to you, and he's asking exactly about that. How do you motivate people? If you as a product leader find out, you recognize, okay, that this is the missing link, right?
Yeah.
This is where the problem is. So what is the solution? How can we actually solve this?
All right. So great question. So if you're going to motivate people, the starting point should be for you to understand motivation. Agreed? So I would argue the de facto modern science of human intrinsic motivation comes from two gentlemen. Their names Richard Ryan and Ed Deci. They wrote the self-determination theory. This is the de facto science of human intrinsic motivation today. So this book is very hard to read. I highly recommend you don't read that one. If you want a primer on it, Ed Deci wrote a very short, very easy to understand primer on called Why We Do What We Do, but he's the founder of self-determination theory. Highly recommend you read this book. Or if you want an entertaining version of it, Daniel Pink wrote the book Drive, New York Times bestselling author. He sat down with Ed Deci and Richard Ryan, read all their materials, and wrote this very accessible book. So I recommend these two books. That'll give you a primer into human motivation. But since we have a little bit of time, I'll go a touch deeper and I'll explain the theory to you. The theory is intrinsic motivation. They draw as a triangle, and they say, this is a self-determination theory. It's not my science. But I will tell you that if you search Google Scholar online for self-determination theory, you'll find the seminal paper written about it. And then you'll find that there are tens of thousands of research papers that have been subsequently written that reference it. And in academia, the value of your work is defined by how many people reference your work, right? It's called a citation. So this is literally considered the de facto science of positive psychology today, or intrinsic human motivation. And they say there's a range from extrinsic to intrinsic. And what these scientists have found is that this is what they call low quality motivation, low quality. And this motivation over here, intrinsic, is called high quality motivation. High quality. And the way they define low versus high quality is how much do you have to keep putting into it? How much do you have to feed it? So with extrinsic motivators, things like money, right? Carrots and sticks, punishment, you're going to lose your job. These, you have to keep feeding them or the motivation goes away. What we're after is producing an environment of high quality intrinsic motivation. High quality, meaning they come to work because they want to. That's the only way, by the way, the only way to maximize creativity of the people on your team is to maximize their intrinsic motivation. So what the scientists tell us is there are three factors involved in developing intrinsic motivation, the I. It's autonomy, making people feel like they have control. Autonomy. Competence, having the right skills and growing and mastering. So mastery in terms of Daniel Pink. Competence. And relatedness. And this one's probably the most complex. This one's easy to know. Like if you're telling people what to do, like you have to do this in this order, they don't feel like they have autonomy, they shut down. We know that. That's foundational. If they don't have the right skills, they're going to shut down. So you have to be constantly on the lookout as a leader to make sure they have the right skills and that they're growing and contributing to the broader team. And lastly, relatedness. This is about connectedness to some positive result. And it turns out if you study, like I have an issue, I've been studying intrinsic motivation and positive psychology my whole life. If you go all the way back to Maslow, Abraham Maslow was the father of positive psychology. But Viktor Frankl, Edward Becker, even Freud and Jung, all of these guys figured out at some point that people are most motivated when they feel like they have a purpose outside of themselves. Now think about that for a moment. One really easy way for a product leader to develop a sense of purpose for your product outside of yourself and your team members is to develop a set of metrics that shows people how they're developing a relationship with their consumers, which is why you need advocates, so you can get that positive feedback to continuously feed your culture. All right, long answer, short question.
Beautiful, beautiful. And actually, Manish has another great question, and then we'll continue with the content. And he's asking, how do you make sure the vision is clean?
And how do you
And
validate?
how do you validate it?
Love it. All right.
Manish has really good questions today. Happy to have you here with us.
Great question, Manish. Two great questions. Here's how it works. Here's my definition of vision. So vision, again, is a component of strategy. It's one component of strategy. You don't have a strategy if you don't have a clear vision. You also don't have a strategy if your team's not motivated by that vision. That's it. And I told you, vision has two components, really: people and problems. People and problems. Now, in the product world, we're used to saying minimum viable product, which I've always believed is a big problem itself. Because you shouldn't be working on a minimum viable product until you first understand your minimum viable audience. Sorry. Minimum viable product for who? For your minimum viable or valuable audience. Okay? So we need to figure out both of those things. And unfortunately, it's not that simple, because there is no product that's been built that adds any real value to the world that solves only one problems for only one person, or solves only one set of problems. Most products solve multiple problems for multiple people. And the best products are those that are the most clear on how they do that. So let's plot these two things against each other in a conceptual framework here. People we solve problems for, and problems we solve. Okay? I believe so. We solve problems for some primary persona, secondary persona, tertiary persona, quaternary persona, right? Going on up to an infinite number of personas. Persona of one. And then we solve a set of problems. We solve one primary problem, secondary problem, third problem for each of these persona sets. And it's complicated, but this is our job. This is the job of product leadership. Because here's the deal. The better job you do as a product leader of refining the problem set and the people set, limiting and refining it, the more likely you will be to produce advocates. This is how you set your vision. You create a clear stack rank of the people you're serving and a clearer stack rank of the problems you're solving for those people. Start with the people, then do the problems, and that's your vision. And add to that, how am I going to measure success for these people? Trust, loyalty, and advocacy. Strategically, and then tactically, how are we going to make money on this product? Because we have to do that or we won't be in business very long.
So I'm so happy you just said that, because this is a good intro for another question from Vladimir from the audience. I know I said we will back to the content, but this is a really, really spot on question. So I do want us to spend a few minutes on it. And Vladimir is asking, at the early stage of startup, there is always lack of capabilities. We don't have enough people, money, etc. What could lead to frustration that we mentioned before. To get it, you need the product and users, etc. Again, so any tips on how to solve this, the chicken and the egg question?
I'm going to use the same model to solve that problem, Vladimir. It is a big problem. It's a problem that's not easy to solve, especially if you do lack money. You lack money, so the goal should be to figure out how to validate as quickly as possible. Are we solving the right problems for the right people? Right? And if you are, then it becomes much easier. If you can prove it with data, it becomes much easier to go find more money to fund more experimentation. Now, every product ecosystem is different, but here's the problem you get into. You're going to get, so let's say you've achieved a little bit of advocacy by solving a problem for a small set of people, right? you're going to get to the point where this chicken and egg problem, like you have to expand the problem set or expand the people set. These are your options, right? And every product leader is going to come to this crossroads. Hey, we figured this magical formula out. We're creating advocates. We've got a good product. Hopefully, we get to that stage. Which way do we go? Do we take these problems that we solve really well and do we expand into more people and solve them in more markets, or expand our minimum viable audience? Or do we go with these people that we're really building a relationship with and solving problems, and do we go figure out how to solve more problems for them? More problems. Yeah? And you have to choose. No team on the planet has infinite resources. So this becomes how do you solve this chicken and egg problem it becomes the job of the product leader, is to figure out, how do I prioritize which problems we're going to solve, which part of our ecosystem we're going to go solve for. This becomes our problem, because I will tell you, the best product leaders, this is an observation that I have, the best product leaders are really good. They're masters of figuring this out. They're masters of figuring it out and expanding very purposefully and carefully, so that when they do expand, they only do it in a way which expands their advocacy base. Make sense?
Makes sense. And actually, if to say what you're saying in a different way, to phrase on that, so in a way, the constraint is actually becoming a gift, right? Because it makes sure that even though you may have the capabilities, you are set on the right team members, the right vision, the right alignment, all of that, because this constraint is holding you from just spending time solving problems that you are not here to solve.
That's exactly right. So the clearer you are on your vision, who are we solving problems for, what problems are we solving, how are we going to measure success, the clearer you are, the more of an engine you have to fend off all the distractions.
It's wonderful. Okay, thank you very much. And the stage is back to be yours.
All right. So I got 10 more minutes, actually 8 more minutes of your time. See if I can use it effectively. So underlying all of these models is a sort of a understanding of how leadership works. So I'm going to share a model with you that I don't usually share in the product world, but I think you guys will get value out of it, especially with the questions that you guys are asking me today. And what I want to do is I want to talk about empathy. We all know that empathy is an important thing in the product world, but there are 2 forms of empathy that are important. The first form of empathy that's important is called cognitive empathy. Cognitive empathy. And in the business world, there's been a bunch of books written on this. Daniel Goleman and his work, if you're familiar with Daniel Goleman, his work on emotional intelligence, primal leadership, how emotional intelligence works. They say that emotional intelligence, Travis Bradbury is another author writing in this space. They say that EQ is more of a predictor of success even than IQ. Hopefully you've heard this at this point. This is old news. It's also called emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence. And I'm gonna simplify it. All of these things really, in my opinion, add up to our capacity as a leader to influence the people around us, our capacity for influence. And I think this is really important for us to understand as product leaders, because this is our job, is to influence. We're figuring out, how do we influence our users so they use our products, our stakeholders so they continue to fund our products, and our teams so they build the best possible products. Our capacity for influence is like one of the key skills in our job role as a product leader. And all the science also shows us that it starts with ourselves. And we have to learn to control our own emotions if we're going to effectively lead. Right? So the science, Daniel Goleman wrote the book from Israel, actually, and Amos Tversky, they wrote the book Thinking Fast and Slow. Incredible book, incredible amount of research that has gone into that stuff. They basically invented the concept of behavioral economics, or why we behave in ways that don't make economic sense. And it turns out that it starts with the self, and we have to we have to stop our fast brain, our lizard brain, our amygdala response, the fight, flight, freeze, facade mode that we're often in. And we have to engage the prefrontal cortex, the most evolved part of our brain, according to fMRI studies done by lots of researchers these days. And we have to get to this point where we are influencing the world around us. And our family teaches this. If you remember your mom when you were little, your mom saying, hey, slow down, use your words. Right? This is your mom teaching you to shut the amygdala down and engage the prefrontal cortex so that you make better decisions. And it turns out, as you go through life, your spheres of who you're capable, your capacity for influence, who you're capable of influencing expands to other groups. And if you're running a product, you're responsible for influencing your users, you're responsible for influencing your stakeholders, and you're responsible for influencing your team to build a great product. Does this make sense? Okay, so we're going to call this our capacity for influence. All right, there's another form of empathy, though, that I feel is even more important than the capacity for influence. And we don't talk about it enough in the business world or in the product world. And this other form is our capacity for caring. All right, it's called affect or affective empathy. Affective empathy. Lots of research going down right now in the affective empathy space. A lot of it's being done by a woman named Brene Brown and her group. There's lots of others. She wrote the book Gifts of Imperfection, incredible book. She's written a bunch of other books too. If you haven't seen her TED Talk, I highly recommend you do. But she's basically working to prove the importance of affect and affective empathy in the business world. Plain English terms, compassion. I'm going to call this our capacity for caring for those whom we lead. Capacity for caring. For caring. And it works the same way. It starts with yourself. Brene Brown shows us this. If you don't care for yourself, it's hard for you to authentically care for others. Your mom teaches you this as well. At a very young age, you learn how to influence your family and to care for your family. Your spheres of who you care for expand through your life. If you run a product, you are responsible for caring for those whom you're leading, those whom you call your customers, your users at the end of the day, your stakeholders, and the team that's building your products. Okay? So quite simply, this is our capacity for caring. I always ask this question when I'm speaking to business leaders. Do you have a bank account? Of course, you say yes. Do you save money for your vacations or for your family's vacations? Of course you do. Or for your kids' college degrees, so you can send them to college? Of course you do. But do you save money for your neighbor's kids or your neighbor's vacation? No, you don't. So I draw these rainbow diagrams to get more diffuse as you move out. You care less for the people on the outer edges than you do for the people at the center, yourself, of course. And that's just a natural, normal way in which the world works. All right, so you're asking yourself, why are we talking so much about empathy? We just want to build products. All right, let me explain in the broader scheme of things why this is so important for all forms of leadership. And I'm going to do it really fast because I've only got 2 minutes. Here's how the world of leadership works. If we take these two realms, this capacity for influence versus our capacity for caring, and we plot them against each other, some patterns emerge. So hopefully we get past this threshold of the self. We care for others. We influence others. And over at the extremes, we influence lots of others. We care for lots of others. Some patterns emerge. The first pattern I see is that people that don't learn to care much for others and don't learn to influence the world in powerful ways, when they go out into the world and get what they want, we typically call them psychopaths. Turns out 1% to 2% of the population is diagnostically psychopathic by the DSM, at least in the United States. But it's a pattern that I see. Okay, these people don't have a lot of influence in the world. There are people, however, who achieve lots of influence, high cognitive empathy, high capacity for influence, but don't care. I call them, I'm going to put a label on them, sociopaths. Okay, narcissists, Machiavellians, lots of leaders like this. There's been lots of books written about this stuff. One is The Sociopath Next Door. Great story by Martha Stout. She's a PhD, does research on sociopathy. Or another one here, Snakes in Suits, written by a guy named Paul Babiak. 2 PhDs, Paul Babiak and Robert Hare. where they give us some of these statistics here. And it turns out there are people that achieve success, financial success, power, fame, money, fortune. Think about people like this, the father of the Me Too movement, hashtag Me Too movement, Harvey Weinstein in the United States, one of the most powerful people in Hollywood for many years until he got caught. You could put lots of other people in here. Bernie Madoff in the U.S., father of the largest pyramid scheme in the history of mankind. Manipulators, and I'm sure you could think of lots of others that you could put in this range. They were influential, but they didn't care, and they didn't cause more caring to occur in the world. All right, another pattern, I've only got a minute here, so I'm going to go fast. Another pattern I see is that there's people with social disorders that don't have much influence. Most of us are normal. We're in this range. But if you think about who the greatest leaders are, the greatest leaders of all time, when I ask that question, I often get the same exact answers. It's people like Abraham Lincoln, or Martin Luther King, or Mahatma Gandhi, or Nelson Mandela, or name the leaders. Lots of great leaders. I've done this. I've surveyed hundreds and hundreds of business leaders around the world. And when you ask yourself the question, why do we think of them as great business leaders? The answer is pretty simple. They caused this shift to occur. They caused the shift to occur for a lot of people. They made a move for a population of people to the upper right-hand corner. They caused more caring to occur, and they were highly influential at it. And they did it through their words and actions. You can take the slide down, if you don't mind. And it turns out, great product leaders that I've studied, great product leaders figured this out as well. They don't have this map, but they've certainly figured this out. The best product leaders are those that cause more caring to occur for their customer base, for their stakeholders, and for their team members, and are highly influential. And when they are capable of doing these things, and both of these scales, by the way, are very learnable. Once you're over a certain threshold, these are both very scalable, very learnable skills. These are the two key skills that I look for in my product leaders. People that can cause more caring to occur, be highly influential in the development of their products, because the best products actually do this as well. They pull people up. They make the world a better place through their services. And that's how I'm going to close. So thank you very much for giving me your time. I'm 2 minutes over, and I apologize for that.
No need to apologize. Now, Sean, may I challenge you?
Sure.
So we are product managers, right? And as you said before, resources are always limited, and we have to be as focused on the mission as possible. So with that in mind, if we need to prioritize one thing that the industry as a whole and everyone that is in the audience should do differently tomorrow morning, or just think of, tackle, whatever it is tomorrow morning, what will it be? Now, I'm going to give you a few seconds to think what is the one thing that you would like to prioritize, because I want to remind the audience to like this video and to like our page, because we want to stay in touch with you. So for you to get future invites to awesome events like this one, and to see all the resources that Sean's team is sharing right now with you live in the comments, please make sure to like this video and page so you'll get to product party with us in future events as well. So Sean, one thing that if to choose from all the critical factors that we mentioned today, one thing that the guys should do differently tomorrow morning, well, what will it be?
I would wake up tomorrow morning and figure out how can I create more empathy amongst my team for my users. That'd be the one thing. That's why I closed on that model. I think empathy is the most important skill in the product leader's toolbox. And the more of it you're able to create and inspire, the better your products will be.
Yes, this is where we find more scarcity, right? Because we see the team on one end, the people that actually use the product on another, some misalignment in the middle, some hypotheses that come out of nowhere, basically, about why do people use it and how do they use it. So this is our opportunity through empathy to make sure, as I said before, that we are focused on the right thing. Thank you so much. I want to say to everyone in the audience, this is Sean Flaherty. He's the VP Innovation at ITX. If you don't know his podcast, Product Momentum, I mentioned it before, please make sure to search for it on Google and listen, because this is just an awesome resource for you to learn more and get better in terms of just alignment of you and your team around focus and around strategy and just building products that matter, right? And that your users like. How was it for you? Product party with us at Product League.
Well, thank you. It was great. We got some great questions, got some good feedback. Hopefully we get out there and we build better products together.
That's the spirit. That's exactly is the spirit. Thank you so much, guys. Looking forward to seeing you next week again on our Practical Wednesday session. And Sean, thank you so much. I had just a blast and learned so much myself. So I'm sure the audience as well. And the questions, as you said, were spot on. So thank you very much for joining us.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone. Have a good day.